Welcome to this episode of The People Dividend. I'm your host, Mike Horn, and I am absolutely thrilled to have in the virtual studio today Dr. Laura Hambley Lovett. And she is a work and career psychologist, a keynote speaker, author, advocate, and host of Where Work Meets Life, the podcast. She hails from Canada. So for those of you who are might hear some differences in the process and however else we do it, it'll all be here. But she has dedicated a career to helping organizations and people to grow, thrive, using the principles of organizational psychology. Her speaking, her facilitation, her research, her writing, her coaching, and her mentoring enable people to flourish in their work and lives. So, Dr. Laura Hamley Lovett, welcome to the People Dividend. Why don't you say a few words about yourself?
Sure, Mike. Thank you so much for having me. I just really appreciate all you do around workplace culture and raising these important topics. So a little bit about me. I'm the mom of 3 teenagers. So I have a 19-year-old boy in college, a 16-year-old boy at home, and a 14-year-old daughter at home. So a life full of teenagers. And I also have my own businesses. I've always been a serial entrepreneur, so I always have more than one thing going on, and a fabulous team across the country. So we help a lot of Canadians figure out their careers, deal with workplace issues, and we help make workplaces better places for human beings. So that's what I'm all about. Where Work Meets Life is about how we can have better work and lives and evolve as human beings as a result.
Well, and clearly this has been a focus of your work since the beginning of the 2000s. Your doctoral dissertation research on that predicted the increasing flexibility and mobility of work, particularly on remote team leadership and what that meant, and continues to be an important topic today as work location has variable work locations has become a permanent fixture of the North American workscape. You've also written on the topic of growing the virtual workplace, 2008, a book by that, co-founding the work firm Work Evolution, acquired in 2021, and helping many organizations. What's driven you to do that? Look, I've had teenagers too. I know it's not getting away from them. But what's driven you to all of this?
Well, I mean, I like to be a role model for my kids about following your passions. And I've always been passionate about following the latest trends and looking into the future. And I've always kind of been one step ahead and always looking out on the horizon. And this whole flexible remote work was really a labor of love for 15 years before the pandemic hit. And I really had a lot to offer during the pandemic because of that. But then I continued to see this whole thing's evolving. It's not going away, even though we had a global pilot testing out remote work. Now that we're a couple of years past the pandemic, I'm just seeing a lot of going back to the way it was, pushback from the organizations and the executives on we need everybody in an office 100% of the time, end of story. And then what I'm hearing from the people on the other side of that is, why do I have to go in 100% of the time and suffer through these grueling commutes to do work where I'm sitting at a computer and I could do it at home even more effectively? So there's this mismatch, and I keep on speaking about this at conferences, at events, and for teams of leaders to how do you navigate this so that you can keep your people motivated and engaged?
I also think certain other factors are at play in addition to the permanence of remote work. I mean, clearly we have more generations in the workplace than ever before. At least 5 generations in the workplace. We have, in many ways, the advance of the gig economy, where people may string together 2 or 3 jobs for a career. In addition, I think we have this idea, the advancing AI and what it means for this new era of management. So sort of moving away from men and women of the corporation to a service orientation to this new AI era, what will be needed in leadership and management? I think it's about dignity, kindness, and respect. I mean, that's what I talk about. Where do you fall on this? I mean, given so much that is taking shape in the world of work today, in the workscape.
Well, I think you nailed it. Dignity, respect. I think compassion or empathy is really, really important. I think being able to trust. So both trust your people, and if you don't have people you trust, then that's another issue. But to be able to be comfortable with impermanence and comfortable with constant change and ambiguity, and to continue to evolve yourself and support and grow your team through all of this, because it is a very volatile, uncertain, unpredictable time in the world and in the world of work.
You're also working now on the issue of toxicity, managerial toxicity, toxicity in the workplace. I think you'll have a book on that topic soon. Why that topic? I think it's endemic in many workplaces, toxicity. But can you tell our audience about that, Dr. Laura?
Sure, Mike. So that is a really good question. What I had been noticing through my work as an organizational psychologist, let's just say over the last 2 decades, but in more recent years, I've noticed more of it. And this is when I go into work with organizations, but also the individuals that come through, whether they're professionals in all different industries, people who have are in their leadership jobs, and they come in and they're dealing with a toxic boss. So a toxic boss can be the CEO of a company. A toxic boss can be a manager level person. But the thing about a toxic boss is that they're either overtly or covertly damaging your ability to do your work, damaging your self-confidence. They erode cultures, and there's 8 different personas of them of how they go about doing this. And a toxic boss can have more than one persona. So my research has identified the latest behaviors and trends around this. And I really want to make a difference here in raising an alarm bell, but also helping educate people on spotting the warning signs, how to navigate it, how to get out of it, what organizations can do about toxic leadership, because it's really hard on HR, especially. They're caught in the middle of this quite often.
It's so interesting. I recall going to a presentation some time ago with Warner Burke, the eminent social psychologist at Columbia, and he was talking about the zeitgeist of toxic management.
Really? Oh,
Yes.
wow. Okay.
And what it might mean for the workplace. What do you think has been the catalyst for some of this increase in toxicity? Or is it more of a recognition, Dr. Laura, that there is toxic behavior, toxic managerial behavior in the workplace?
Well, that's a good question. So one of my latest surveys with my university student, because I'm an adjunct professor as well, which is a real gift to be able to do research on this with brilliant young students. But we're looking at burnout and the relationship between toxic leadership and burnout across the generations. And our hypothesis is that the younger generations won't put up with it as much. The younger generations have been raised with bullying's bad, harassment's bad, and they've been raised to really say, I have needs and my mental health is important. And I think that people in my generation, Generation X and boomers, I think they're willing to put up with more, because you just grin and bear it, and you just have to be resilient and work with what you have. Whereas I think the younger generations, they'll call BS on it earlier.
I think you're so right. And certainly, most of a person's evolution in terms of their advancement in organizations happens because of their technical expertise. And they've got a certain set of smarts. And we've known, also for 4 decades of social science research that being a good technical manager doesn't make you a good leader. And yet we persist. I mean, that is the pathway for many. So how do we, given what's going on with I'm less willing to tolerate bad managerial behavior, And yet maybe managers don't have the support to grow and develop their careers. How do we fix that?
Yeah, it's really tough because when the economy's down, companies don't invest in leadership development, and then what we get is more and more leaders struggling. And I differentiate a difficult boss from a toxic boss, and a difficult boss is someone who's, maybe not a great communicator, maybe doesn't delegate very well, maybe, tries to, not let others have enough rope, or it's all those kind of typical challenges, and we need to develop, support, grow our leaders. And I really, really strongly feel there should be technical streams in every company to advance and get paid more without having to lead people because we're not all wired that way to have a fit with leading human beings.
And one of the topics on which you speak is about burnout. So I'm just imagining, let's say I'm working in one of these organizations or firm manager that displays certain toxicity or toxic behaviors. And, I'm taking care of myself because I've got making income. I'm going to work. How does the topic of burnout arise in organizations? I mean, because given all of this uncertainty, given the turbulence, people do experience burnout.
Mm-hmm. And they are, and it's very much an organizational phenomenon, as I'm sure you know, Mike. It's about an organization having conditions that cause chronic stress that's unmanaged by the person. So over time, if you think of a person as a cup full of water, it depletes and depletes them until they don't have any resources left, and they are utterly exhausted physically. They are cynical about things ever getting better. And number three, they start to lose confidence in their abilities. And so their self-esteem depletes, and they just feel like maybe it's them that's the problem. And I see this across industries. I see this on a high rate now, actually. It's gone up over the last year in North America.
Now, do you see this across the world? I mean, you speak both internationally and in Canada. You've been with the SIOP, the Society for
Yeah.
Industrial Organizational Psychology, South by Southwest, International Facility Management Association, in Canada, C2 Montreal, CPHR Alberta, Work Wellness Institute of Canada. Are these patterns around burnout and around toxicity, do you think they're universal, or are they really contained to certain locations and geographies?
Universal. But I would add to that some countries and cultures are more advanced in the, interventions or the societal changes they're trying to make work and life better. So certain cultures are more advanced than others in doing that. But I'd say toxic workplaces and cultures is a global phenomenon, for sure. But there hasn't been enough research in North America, funny enough. Most of the research has been overseas that I've been able to find, which is why I'm super excited to be doing more research here.
That's great. I'm a teacher as well. I'm a program director for the HR and Human Resources Management and the Leadership graduate programs at Golden Gate University in San Francisco. And I think it's great to have an opportunity to interact and engage with students and continue to, advance our scholarship. I just contributed a book chapter in the perils and of AI and human resources, and we'll see where, all of this takes us. But I was really fascinated by one of your blogs at the end of 2024, and it was, "Let's stop justing ourselves." Why the word "just" undermines our confidence. And I think about that, my dad used to sometimes back in the days of some kinds of telephones, he's going to say, "It's just Dad." And I always thought that was a sort of, right, meant a little more to me than that. But talk about what you've written there around "Let's stop justing ourselves."
Wow, you are covering a lot of territory and asking great questions, by the way. And if I can ever come and speak in San Francisco at the events
Sure.
there,
Golden Gate, yeah.
I love San Francisco. I was there for SHRM, Northern California, and it's so awesome.
Just a few weeks ago, or just this
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
So was I. I presented there.
Did you?
Yes.
Okay. Wow. And we didn't cross paths there.
We didn't
Okay, because
cross
it
paths.
wasn't
Isn't
that
that
big of
so
a
interesting?
conference.
Yes, I was presenting on multi-generational workforces and EI, emotional intelligence, and the relationship to AI.
Ah, awesome. We are going to have to talk
All
more.
right.
I love the multi-generational topic too. I
Uh,
think it's so important.
yes.
So the question you asked was about justing, and I had heard some of my clients using that, and I just decided I gotta write a blog on it. So I just put it just went up on LinkedIn today. We repurposed it for LinkedIn as well because we think it's an important topic, and a lot of us don't even realize we're saying it.
Of course. What does it mean to you? I mean, I know people can go and find out about it, and
Mhm.
certainly when they visit your website at drlaura.live,
Mhm.
they'll be able to find it and other resources that you offer, and that will be in our show notes. And I encourage listeners to visit those and to visit Dr. Laura Hamley Lovett at drlaura.live. Best place for to learn about her work and everything that she's doing to help make the world and make people and organizations better places.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I aim to share great information. My podcast is in its fifth year, and it's definitely a labor of love. It's been a lot of work, but I've got on some amazing thought leaders and guests globally. And I've been speaking a lot on it myself. And I talk about these topics: toxic bosses, burnout, more toxic bosses, whatever other topic is important and interests me. And I think that is helpful for the world of work, then I'll talk about.
Well, Dr. Laura's podcast is available in all the places where you might find podcasts: YouTube, Spotify, Apple. And you speak a lot on the podcast where work meets life around purpose, around listening to a call, around transforming. I saw one title, I think it was Transforming the Daily Grind in the Quest for a Better Life. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the evolution. 5 years for a podcast, that's a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. So originally, I have four pillars: thriving humans, so how humans can thrive, how organizations can thrive, career fulfillment, so finding purpose, meaning, and fulfillment in your career. And then my fourth one is advocating for a better world. So it's like, you have a lot of different lanes, Laura. That's going to be confusing to people. But what's most important to know is that it's topics at the intersection of work and life. Not every episode may interest you, but a lot of episodes interest people because they are really important topics if you are someone who is in the world of work and you happen to be a human being, not AI. It's topics that humans are dealing with at all levels: leaders, HR, professionals, people in non-professional careers. I mean, I bring on artists, I bring on people who are doing really good work in the communities around the world. So it's not, one specific niche. It crosses a lot of key topics, and that's why I can do it for 5 years and hopefully many more years, because it's interesting and there's a lot of great variety.
Well, it runs again through these four themes, these dimensions: career fulfillment, thriving organizations, thriving humans, and advocating for a better world. Talk
Mm-hmm.
about that last one a little more, Dr.
Sure.
Laura, advocating for a better world.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So I'd say, periodically I'll do an episode that really calls to me. So I'm an advocate to end violence against girls and women, and I have a movement called the With Her movement here in Canada. And I became an advocate to raise awareness and end sex trafficking in particular. So one of my recent episodes was on the horrific situation with child sex trafficking in LA, but also globally. So I had two experts on there, and we talked about it. We recorded it live in LA, and that's a topic that a lot of people ostrich around. I mean, it's pretty much the most heinous of crimes. But I like to say we need to know about this, we need to be aware of it, and we need to be doing something about it. And so I find people that are doing something about it really inspire me to do more and hopefully inspire my viewers and listeners.
That's great about ending violence against girls and women, as well as I think the upside of what you're doing in that regard, an additional upside, not the upside, but an additional upside, is how do you help people to grow their confidence and leadership skills when you're young, for children and youth who are victims of these crimes.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole other, I mean, that level of trauma is a huge, it takes, years and years and years to recover, but your whole life will be a recovery. It's not just, okay, you're recovered now. It's a lifelong recovery. And I really have been talking more about trauma. And I had the author of Heal to Lead on my podcast. That's my episode this week. And it's all about how all leaders have had trauma, whether it's big T or little t, but a lot of leaders haven't healed their trauma, meaning that's why we have a lot of toxic leaders, basically. Like, that's one of the key reasons. And a lot of difficult leaders, to be honest with you.
Well, and for listeners who are interested in exploring this topic of organizational trauma further, there's a great episode of the People Dividend podcast that hosts an organization trauma specialist, someone with a PhD in nursing who has reshifted and refocused her career to focus on organizational trauma. And she starts with the belief that many people suffer trauma, and that trauma is brought into organizations. And what do we do about this issue? It's a fascinating topic. And another thing that's just, you are I imagine a tremendous value and resource to your clients. I mean, given your breadth, given your depth, given your focus. But one of the things that, is just in addition to Dr. Laura Hambley Lovett is that you author under a pen name, Laura Lovett, psychological thrillers, Losing Cadence, Finding Sophie.
Yeah, they're right behind me if you can see on my video, because you do this on YouTube, right? Yeah,
second shelf.
They're beside each other there.
Shelf, right?
Thank you.
What about those?
So I always wanted to pen a novel, and I started my first one in 2002, and I have a very active and creative imagination, and took me 8 years to finish because I kept stopping and starting it. Did a PhD during that time, which doesn't go well with getting a novel done at the same time. Had a couple of kids. That doesn't go well with getting a novel done. And then I said, I'm going to finish this. That's it. And I finished it when I was just about to have my daughter. I finished it in bed the week before I had her. I said, I'm going to finish this dang novel. And then I met an editor just by fluke, and she said that this is better than Gone Girl. I mean, you need to publish this. It's very, very gripping, and it really delves into the theme about possession of a woman. So a billionaire abducts his high school sweetheart 10 years later into the perfect world that he's created for her. So it dives into the control and possession of women, mental health, because it explores his mental health and his childhood in book 2 especially, which is Finding Sophie. And it's one of those page turners, and it's written for the screen. So I said it belongs as a film. And then I met a film producer, and we're actively pitching it for a TV series, because we actually have 3 seasons plus of content. So
that's great.
That's what we're working on in a serious way. I mean, it's a serious endeavor, and it's a labor of love and excitement. And, I'm learning about the production industry and how that all works. It's kind of another career pivot for me in a way. I'm not changing careers, but this is like an add-on.
Well, it's so great. I mean, the work that you're doing, I mean, through that form of entertaining media to raise awareness on mental health and domestic violence is so important.
Yeah. That's the thing, Mike. It's always, there's this going on, but how can I make the world a better place? How can I use the creative endeavors to shine a light on things and talk about these difficult issues that face us? And I've been faced with adversity too. Our nieces were killed in 2019, and it was just a shock, and it was a double homicide, and it was all over the news here. And it was something that just made me want to double down my efforts around helping build confidence in girls and helping build confidence in women, and get rid of the toxic abuse that goes on, whether it's domestic, whether it's sex trafficking, etc.
Well, you've done such an amazing job of as an entrepreneur. I mean, helping people through all of these difficult times. I mean, as I understand, you've launched several counseling psychology practices, including Canada Career Counseling, Synthesis Psychology, and have really helped thousands of people throughout Canada.
That's true. And I have a great team, right? I just, when I look back at my life, it's the number of psychologists that I've mentored, hired, trained, university students, seeing them blossom and flourish in different careers, whether they end up going into psychology or org psychology or HR or wherever else, or law, or they go into different fields. But I just love seeing young people flourish.
Well, it's great. And we have a lot of flourishing ahead of us in 2025 as people are listening to this. And just as we come to a conclusion, Dr. Laura Hambley Lovett, and please visit her at drlaura.live. You'll find her there. A work and career psychologist, a keynote speaker, an author, an advocate, and host of the Where Work Meets Life podcast, now 5 years in the running. And if you were to offer our listeners a piece of guidance about leading an emotionally resilient work life, or to lead we don't even have to put emotionally resilient work life, but to lead to have resilience in your work life, what would that piece of advice or guidance be?
Well, I don't know. I'm just going to say it because it came into to my mind. I think the usual suspects are like, look after your physical health, your emotional health, your mental health. I'd say your spiritual health is super important. And that doesn't necessarily mean an organized religion. It means however spirituality looks to you, getting really comfortable with the notions that we have way more in common than we don't as human beings: connection, consciousness, and impermanence. Like everything's impermanent, right? So getting rid of the ego. So there's so many good books on ego. Cy Wakeman, I'm actually talking to today. She is an amazing, inspirational person and mentor of mine, but her book No Ego really moved me. Or Ego is the Enemy is another book. But that's what I mean. Like, we got to get our egos settled down, and we got to evolve our spiritual health.
Well, thank you so much. It's just been great to be in conversation with Dr. Laura Hambley Lovett. Please visit her at drlaura.live, and you'll find more information in the show notes. So thank you so much, Dr. Laura.
Mike, you are amazing. Thanks for having me.
And until the next episode of The People Dividend, stay well.